Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of Lumia.
And we're super passionate about all things coaching, and we want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training thousands of life coaches.
Let's dive into the science and magic of coaching.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about empathy mapping as a tool for coaching with some surprising benefits. Noelle, good morning. I feel like that little last tag was directly from you. Well,
It was. And we talk about empathy mapping often. And I took a deep dive into the topic because I wanted to understand a little bit more, not only about the tenets of empathy mapping, but what an individual coach practitioner needs to think about for themselves in order to enact it. And then there are actually some really incredible, surprising health benefits for the coach practitioner in conducting empathy mapping. So let's get into this one because it's juicy.
Yeah. Well, let's start with what is empathy mapping for anyone who does not know.
Yeah. Empathy mapping, I first came into contact with it when you and I were back in startup land a million years ago, working with apps and humans and tech. And it's traditionally used as a way of understanding consumers and very specifically understanding how a person is going to think, feel, say, and do in a really specific situation. So we're taking one moment, one sliver in time, and really getting into the head of a person to understand a 360 perspective around this person for the purpose of serving them and for the purpose of compassionately meeting their needs.
Yeah, I remember sitting around the table or standing around the table, and as an exercise, we would empathy map, various things for our company.
Yeah, there was an example that stood out for me very powerfully to illustrate this point. And it was around thinking about international airports and what it's like for someone who is landing in a foreign country for the first time, who doesn't speak or read the common language. And what do they viscerally experience in that moment of walking off the plane? What do they say? What do they do? What do they hear? What do they think? What are their specific pain points? And what are their wins in different situations?
You know why I love this? It reminds me of when I was a screenwriter. We did this empathy mapping characters and kind of walking in the shoes of a character and seeing the world through their eyes. But not only that, but what do they hear? What do they feel? What's happening internally? All of that stuff. So this is something that I'm familiar with.
It's vital for coaches to walk through these different pieces with their client for any given situation to really do a 360, because when we kind of skirt over a situation and move too quickly from thought to action, we miss out on a lot of detail, specifically around thinking, deeper cognitive internal voices that or nasty voices or even positive voices that may be wildly off the mark. The coach needs to know what's going on in their client's head. And then I think the hear part is really interesting too. And that's another piece of cognitive load that you wouldn't typically take into consideration unless you knew to look for it. This is why it's a good framework to use. And that is what other people are telling your client about a specific situation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can really be non-judgmental and keep your story and your stuff out of the room if you don't do empathy mapping.
True. And that's, one of the pieces as we start to get into, okay, what does a coach need to do this work? And that's that we need to be both concurrently aware that someone is going to be telling us um, what they're experiencing, what they're thinking, what they're hearing, what their pains are, what their gains are. And we are also going to have our own memory set of our own lives, our own experiences that are running like a slideshow. And so when we do this, we need to act intentionally to hang up our own lives at the door. And this is a skill set in coaching that's developed over time.
The other thing I was thinking is not only is this important for your sessions, but also marketing.
Oh, very much so. And
Who's your audience? You know, who are you speaking
who's your audience? What's keeping them up at night? And the way that you and I teach coach marketing is to think about what's keeping your audience up at night and what can you provide to help them feel better in that moment of pain,
right?
and to give.
I remember when we were doing this, there were even questions like, what would they order at Starbucks? Which sounds ridiculous, but it's in the details that I could kind of get a good 360 sense of who this person is, or who I'm talking to when it comes to marketing, the demographic, and the kind of person that would buy your book or your services or anything like that.
It gives you data. It gives you information into the world that belongs to someone else
Right.
that you are a guest in. And when we're a guest, it's important to be observant. This also is a huge part of cultural competency, is understanding that the way that you perceived the world around you and the things that you perceive as true might not be so for someone else. And that doesn't make that other person's vision wrong.
Should we get into how to empathy map?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how to do it is to really simply follow the framework of asking the questions. But there's a couple of setups as you're moving through it, and that's around the way that we listen and also the consideration of yourself as a whole human. So, number one is to get into a habit and a practice of, and this is active listening, of listening to what the other person is saying to you as it's the most important thing in the world.
Right.
And that means that you're going to tune in with your whole head and your whole heart to listen to the words and listen to the emotion and the feeling.
If you're posting on social media while you're listening, would that be active listening or not so much?
I mean, you'd be active, but you wouldn't be listening.
Right.
Right. So that would not be. I did this yesterday. I took a meeting with someone, and there's a lot of things in my head. We're living in a really complex time, and I found myself drawing my focus to her eyes as she was talking, so that I could center her as the speaker and to really block out everything in my life so that I could truly hear. And the outcome, I think, for both of us, and she was definitely actively listening to me as well, was that we had a really synergistic experience and really connected on a deeper level. And both were kind of like, wow, like this is a good conversation. And that's what we're going for in coaching, is generating that feeling of warmth for our clients where they're like, wow, like this person is really hearing me. And that's a gift. That's a gift that we bestow every time we engage in a coaching conversation with active listening.
Yeah, and also the importance of eye contact, which is slowly fading as we get so used to just looking at phones and our computers, and so in real time, to stare into someone's eyes it's powerful. Like I don't think a lot of people do that these days.
When we hang out in LA this summer, I'm going to stare into your eyes, John.
Well, especially in LA, we don't do eye contact, so it's going to more than 2 seconds and it gets awkward.
But that's a really great point. And that's part of empathy mapping, is actually taking time to consider what barriers you might face in trying to understand the other person. And This can be such a range of things. It can be assumptions that you have about someone. If someone has a specific demographic about them that's traditionally stereotyped, there's a pretty strong chance that you, as a coach, despite your best intentions, might be rolling in with some assumptions that you need to draw awareness to and say, oh, look at that. That's an assumption. I'm going to be aware of it so that it doesn't filter into my judgment set.
Mm-hmm.
And then, another thing that you could take into consideration is your mood. If you're cranky, if
Mm-hmm.
you're angry, if you're having a no good, very bad day and you're going into a client session, how might that color your capacity to hang up your life suit at the door? I like to think of Mr. Rogers when he would switch sweaters on the way
Right.
in
Right.
to kind of signal, like, okay, I'm going to be a different person in this space.
That's a great point, and I'm so guilty of allowing my own life and my own anxiety and all the stuff that I'm thinking about, allowing some of that to leak into sessions. Today, I definitely take a beat before a session, whether it's a breath or a meditation, and just kind of clear the canvas in my head mentally before I go in. Because naturally, if you don't, yeah, your mood is going to it's going to leak through unless you make an intention for it not to.
Yeah, and as humans, Pavlovian rituals work really well for this. Anything from popping a mint to signal to yourself, all right, I'm going to shift into a coaching mindset. Lighting a candle to signify that you're now entering, a sacred space with someone else. When you engage in those somatic cues for yourself, it really does help in shifting the mindset. And if you really feel like you can't do it, if whatever is going on for you or whatever is weighing on you is truly impacting your ability to focus, ICF standards call for the coach to let the client know that they can't show up. Coaches get sick days too. And if we're being ethical about our practice, that would absolutely include our inability to focus. Let's get into why that's important, is that deep level of focus. Because according to ICF standards, the ICF doesn't directly talk about empathy mapping. But what the ICF does talk about is honing in on a really specific situation and taking the time to do the deep dive, which is another way of using the empathy mapping framework. Because oftentimes, when a client is experiencing a pain point around a specific situation, it's actually just the tip of an iceberg. And that iceberg flows way underwater and goes into so many different aspects of the client's life. And quite literally, according to the ICF, the job of the coach is to go after that whole picture.
Mm.
How is this showing up in your whole life? And to have the client start to generate awareness around, oh, this is an iceberg.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about in a lot of the my sessions, they end up being powerful if we are looking at what's underneath. And so when you say iceberg, that reminds me of that. Like a lot of times, what clients come to see me about is on the surface, and then as we process and talk about their life, what's underneath, and that surfaces, and that's very powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, keeping in mind the work that we're called to do as coaches, there are some tricks of the trade. And, in addition to the ritual and the somatic cues, the Harvard Business Review put out a really nice report around empathy. And they were talking about interpersonal work environments, but I think that this particular technique can be used for anything. Thinking about parents, thinking about moving into conversations with family or friends, or knowing that you have a coaching conversation coming up, knowing that you have a meeting. It's to take time to prepare your nervous system. And the technique is to tilt your chin down and feel as if your head is gently suspended from above, which gives you the feeling of lengthening your neck. And then you put your shoulders down. I like to think of this as tucking your shoulder blades in your back pocket. And then you expand your belly with a breath. And then you relax back with your breath out, and then tune into the environment around you, um, using your senses. So, like putting your hand on the table to feel if it's cool or if there are ridges in it. And this is a simple way of calming your nervous system so that you can get some grounded activation as you move into empathy mapping, or whatever it is that you need to focus on.
Ooh, I love this. I've never heard this before. These are little exercises that you can do. It seems like a way to drop into your body and be present.
It is. It is a specific technique designed to calm your nervous system so that you can drop into your body.
I love it. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, I'm going to use it also. I was delighted to find it. And then the piece that I wanted to close with is, I think, just so freaking beautiful and juicy, because anyone who shows up in this time to be a helper is doing some heavy lifting right now. It's like the world is just, it just keeps spinning and shit just keeps happening. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody needs a break. And um, it's hard to get back up again and to calm our nervous system, and not just coaches. I'm thinking about, parents, friends, colleagues, family members to drop in and say, all right, I'm going to show up. So when we treat people with empathy, it 100% makes the person on the receiving end feel good, which is what we want to do as coaches. We're providing customer service. And it also brings out a really powerful secondary flow of kindness from the coach practitioner.
Yeah, not only feel good, but feel seen, feel understood, feel heard. It's basically meeting your client where they're at. So without the empathy piece, you're actually not.
Right. Right. And then when we engage in the empathy piece as a coach, what happens for you as a coach is you begin to experience your own relationship with kindness, which is an active form of engagement that flows out of empathy. And there's a whole body of work on this. And studies show that if someone is empathetic and they'll be able to deeply understand a situation, they'll be able to put the needs of others above their own. And this gives increased well-being to the coach. And this increases positive social bonds for the coach.
Yeah.
And then it goes beyond that. So in addition to increased well-being for everybody involved and positive social bonds, which are just, that's what gets our endocrine system pumping as humans, engaging in empathy as a coach reduces pain, stress, anxiety, depression, and blood pressure.
I love that you pointed out the benefits of practicing empathy, as not only for the clients, but also as the coach. That's interesting.
And that's the surprising benefit, is that as a coach, you know that you're going to have to wield empathy. And the benefit of showing up for your job is, all of this kind of stuff. It also gives us a boost in energy. And this research came out of the UC Berkeley Greater Good Science Center that the folks that they studied felt stronger and more energetic after engaging in empathy. They reported feeling calmer and less depressed, and they also experienced increased feelings of self-worth.
Love it.
I don't know any other day jobs who give these benefits.
Yeah. What a great reminder also, especially also for me, as we end the value of empathy, the effects of empathy, not only on your client, but also you as a coach. And it is also proof that as you help other people, you're not just giving, that as you help other people, you are also receiving as well, that it can be therapeutic for you, a catalyst for your own growth.
Yes, it will be a catalyst for your own growth. And, going back to that nervous system response, you get a tremendous boost.
Right. Well, I'm going to go practice more empathy. I need it more in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in, and be well.
Yeah, be well. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to lumiacoaching.com/everything. Explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a bold community to do it with.
Lumia is ready to equip you with the tools, training, and community you will need to reach your goals. If you're ready to build a unique coaching business on your own terms while making an impact on the world at large, Lumia is the next bold step in your coaching journey. That's lumiacoaching.com/everything.
And hey, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it.